In this video, we're going to take a look at one of the logical functions called AND. AND means both, and the AND function requires logical values in order for it to work. So before we get to the AND function, though, we're going to set it up and try to make it a little bit easier here by putting some stuff in columns G and H. So this is the rule on this worksheet. Calculate grades using the AND function. A student passes if both of the following are true. The homework score is at least the minimum. Well, there's the minimum homework. And the final test score is at least the minimum, and that's the minimum test score up there. Okay. So now let's go and there are two logical tests. So the first one is, did they pass the homework? And let's put an equal sign here. And they passed the homework if this was greater than or equal to this number up here. The B2 is never going to change, so I need to make that an absolute cell reference by putting the dollar signs in. Okay, and I should get true for this because George did pass, and it looks like Thomas, James, and Andrew did not. So let's copy this down and see if it works. So on this row, Thomas; on this row, James, and on this row, Andrew. So that's correct. Now in column H, I want to put another logical test. Did the student pass the test or not? Well, they passed the test if their test score, in this case George, is greater than or equal to the minimum required for the test. And again, that's not going to change when I copy the formula, so it needs to be an absolute cell reference. And George passed the test, so we should have true for him in this column as well. And now let's copy this all the way down, and we'll see that looks like only one person failed the test, and that was John. Okay. Now I need to know if they passed both. So they passed both if this is true and this is true. Whenever you hear the word both or you hear the word and, we are probably going to be using the AND function. So let's go to I5 here, and let's go to our logical tests, or logical functions rather, and choose AND. And when the dialog box comes up for the AND function, it has room for some logical values. And down here it explains that a logical value is something that's either true or false. Okay. So my first logical value for George is, did he pass the homework? And notice over here it tells me what the value of that expression is. And then tab down or click down in logical 2 and click on H5, the value that says whether George passed the test or not. So it shows us the two values over here on the right. This is true, this is true. And then down at the bottom it tells me my formula result is true, because if both of these are true, then the whole thing is considered true. You notice that as I tabbed into logical 2 here, logical 3 opened up. If I tab into logical 3, logical 4 opens up. And you know, supposedly you can have as many as 255 logical tests in here. And since we're using the AND function, all 255 of those would have to be true in order for the function result to be true. In real life, it's not very often we have more than maybe 3 or 4 logical tests. So those are the only two logical tests we need. Let's go ahead and click on OK. And this tells us if the person passed the class. So George passed the class. We got a couple of trues here. So that guy passed, and this guy passed, and this guy passed. So it looks like 4 of them passed. Let's get our fill handle and copy that in. And okay, that passed. This one passed. This one passed. They're both true, and this one passed. Okay. So now I have a value in column I that tells me if they passed or not. Now I can go back to column D, and I can put in an if function that determines whether to put the letter P or the letter F in that cell. So let's go to our logical functions here and choose if. Make sure you're in D5 before you start. My logical test is, did they pass both out here? And if that's true, then put a P, and I don't need the quotation marks. Well, I need them, but I don't have to type them in. Excel will put them in for me. So P if true and F if false. Click on OK, and it should tell me George's grade is a P. Let's go up here and let's center that a little bit. And now let's copy that all the way down the page. And we had 4 people that passed. Madison passed, and John Q. Adams passed, and Martin Van Buren passed. So Every place where there's a true over here, we should see a P over here, and every place where there's false over here, we should see an F over here. So if you want to, you can hide these because they don't really have much relevance as far as what a user would want to see. They have obviously a lot of relevance as far as computing the right values, but nobody needs to see those. So you could just go here and you could right click on them and you could hide those cells. Also, another way to do this is if instead of referring to I5 here, actually let's get our dialog box up here. Get the dialog box up by clicking on the FX when you're in the cell. So I could actually put my own logical test in here. I could type out the AND function, and the two arguments to the AND function are, let me see, the first one would be B5 greater than or equal to $B $2, comma, and the second one would be C5 greater than or equal to $C $2, and close the parentheses. So I'm pulling the AND function from that column that it was in before and actually stuffing it into my if function. It's a little bit more complicated that way, but you should get the same results. So click on OK, and I should get P. And if I copy this down the page, you should not see any changes at all. The P's and F's should remain the same. So this, starts getting to be kind of a long, ugly formula, and I would encourage you, at least until you get used to using Excel, to do it with some simpler formulas over here off to the side. Find a little bit of area that you're not using, break your problem down into pieces, and then use those pieces to compute the answer. So that's the AND function. The AND function can be extended from 2 things to 3 or 4 or 5 or as many as you need, but the rule is the function only returns the value true if every single one of the arguments that you pass in is true as well.